Hello, my name is Jerry Clayton. I've been a police professional for over 30 years and the elected sheriff of Washtenaw County in Ann Arbor, Michigan for over 14. I join you today participating in the 24/7 The People's Filibuster for Gun Safety to make a case for change that I believe is necessary for all of us as Americans to actually live in safe and healthy communities. Our current state, whenever we talk about a national crisis or epidemic or a tragic event, it's important to remind ourselves of our existing reality and the current state of affairs so we can better understand why we need change and what the consequences are of doing nothing. So, quickly, just sharing some numbers that many of you in Congress and elsewhere already know, but I think it's important for us to reiterate. In this country, every day, on average, 320 people are shot, 111 are shot and killed, and 12 children die as a result of gun violence. These include murders, suicides, accidental deaths. It includes violence in our most under-resourced neighborhoods that already suffer from historical racism, a lack of structural economic investment, and the mass shootings which plague this country like no other. In 2020, the most recent year for which completed data is available, over 45,000 people died from gun-related injuries in the U.S. According to the CDC, nearly 8 in 10 U.S. murders in 2020, almost 20,000, involved a firearm. That marked the highest percentage since at least 1968. We also know that the three leading causes of death in the United States for people's ages 15 through 24 are unintentional injury, homicide, and suicide. A little over half of all suicides in 2020, which amounted to almost 25,000, involved a gun. The 2021 National Firearms Survey counts more than 393 million civilian-owned firearms, which equates to about 120 firearms for every 100 citizens in this country. We also know that over 81 million adult Americans are estimated to own a firearm. And as of June 5th, which was the 156th day of the year, we were over 22 weeks into this year, our country has experienced at least 246 mass shooting events. So that's the current state of affairs. What's the consequences of us maintaining the status quo? So while I shared with you a few numbers while reviewing the current reality, numbers alone don't truly convey the impact that gun violence has on our communities, our families, and our children. We know that gun violence touches everyone in ways that we can see and feel, and in ways that are oftentimes impact us in subtle yet devastating ways. Our children go to school in fear. They're growing up with response drills for when an armed individual comes to shoot them. Being afraid in our schools have become just a normal way of life in this country. Our parents are dropping off our children at school with the voices of mothers, one who lost a child and says to all of us that next time it'll be one of you crying in my place. They drop their children off at school with the memories of the little girl who wiped her dead friend's blood on herself to play dead to keep from being killed herself. The increased availability of guns will continue to contribute to the staggering numbers of deaths from suicide. The increased access to guns will continue to contribute to accidental shootings and fatalities from guns. Our under-resourced communities, plagued by generational poverty and institutional racism, will continue to be disproportionately impacted by the lack of opportunity created by those conditions and also reinforced by the proliferation of guns in the hands of young people who fear for their lives as they attempt to navigate communities that we have failed to make safe and healthy. Americans will continue to experience stress and trauma resulting from loss of loved ones. We will continue to experience an ongoing sense of lack of safety and fear, leading to increased negative mental and physical health outcomes, which we know contribute to less safe communities and poor quality of life. The consequences of maintaining the status quo in America is an America that does not feel safe and Americans that are not well. So, what's the change we must aspire to? Where must we go? I first want to share my aspirations. I think the solutions to gun violence should be viewed and evaluated in terms of outcomes that we hope to achieve, framed in these two questions. What kind of country do we want to live in? What kind of future do we want to have for our children? I aspire to a future for our children where gun violence is a rarity, not a part of everyday life, where all families and all children can walk the street, play outside, and go about their daily lives without fear. I aspire to a country where politicians and governing bodies can put good public policy and science based solutions above political ideology, where common sense laws and policies and practices to address gun violence can be enacted with bipartisan agreement because they are supported by a majority of a country that's tired of death, tired of grief, tired of fear. I aspire to a future where the Second Amendment is not any more sacrosanct than any of the other amendments, with recognition that it has values but limits which can be enacted for the public good. I aspire to a future where mental health services and support for all of our children, as well as all of our adults, are readily available, not stigmatized, and where concerns about behaviors are reported and treated in the appropriate way. I aspire to a future where our communities come together to develop solutions on a local and not just state and federal level. Because while impacted by national trends and policies, every community is unique, and solutions can and should be developed locally in conjunction with national and state policy. And finally, what are some practical applications we can and must take? Preventing gun violence and injuries and deaths is complicated and presents a variety of challenges. There will be no single simple solution to this complex problem. It will take a multifaceted, multi-layered approach, but there are things we can do, and there are things we must do to help prevent gun violence. And the only way we can do it is by working together. So there are a number of laws that the U.S. Congress or state legislatures can pass. Congress should pass laws closing current loopholes that allow gun shows or private sales to continue without background checks. A recent CBS poll showed that 81% of respondents are in favor of background checks for all buyers. Congress and state governments should pass laws making it easier to temporarily remove guns from the hands of people who are a danger to themselves and others. 72% of respondents were in favor of the federal red flag law, which can help keep guns out of the hands of individuals with a mental health disorder that are appropriately identified as a risk to themselves and others. The AR-15 semi-automatic assault rifle are weapons of war designed to kill, not hunt, and should be banned. They also present significant risk to my colleagues in the police profession. There have been too many situations where our brave men and women responding to active shooters have found themselves in situations where they are outgunned. Over 62% of Americans polled are in favor of a nationwide ban of assault rifles. Congress should close domestic violence loopholes so that ongoing domestic relationships, as well as legal ones, qualify. Congress should also pass laws that require that guns be safely stored and secured, and that gun owners are responsible for the outcome of the events associated with their weapons. Congress should raise the age allowable for purchasing guns. An individual that cannot legally purchase tobacco or alcohol should not be able to purchase any firearm, let alone a semi-automatic assault rifle. Voters need to contact their legislative representatives and make their views on gun safety and reform clear. Then vote accordingly. Our representatives and government have a fundamental responsibility to keep the people they say that they serve safe and help secure a good quality of life for all families. We, as Americans, as voters, should hold them to that basic requirement. We, as Americans, should develop coalitions and create proactive plans on a local level to address community violence and gun-related issues. We should work with our neighbors, our faith communities, our local units of governments, our nonprofits, and caring individuals to develop the kind of community-based support for multi-layered short-term, intermediate, and long-term strategies that we know can create safe communities and well-being across all of our neighborhoods. Finally, we do not have to live in fear. We do not have to tolerate our children, families, and communities not being safe. We can work together to change the future that we aspire to. Thank you.